Hey everyone, welcome back to Mount Schmoedown, the Schmoedown show where we go into players' careers, except for the summer and the fall, we've been going into factions. And no, my regular co-host um, Ryan and Sean are not here, but I'm very happy to have Daniel from Schmoes of the North, and we're really happy to have Laura Kelly, the Star Wars competitor. How are you doing today, Lola?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Ben, Daniel. I'm very happy to be here.
Of course. So, these are going to be really casual. We're just going to talk. The first question I want to ask is, what is like being on swag this season?
It's been really fun. It's definitely been it's been a sort of roller coaster because obviously at the beginning of the year was a little bit hard to make that adjustment. I came into this game with you know just me and my one manager, and it was just us, and we were a team of two, and that's kind of all I thought it was ever going to be, until the whole draft thing, and then corruption sort of gave me my first home in the Schmoedown. I was an outsider looking in up until then, and then I finally got to feel a little bit more like an insider. So being torn away from that was kind of hard. But that was, I guess how the game was played last year and this year, and so and here we are. And it's been this year. It's been fun. It took me a little bit of time to kind of get into the swing of things with swag, but I think we're there, and it's been a fun year. I gotta say, it's been interesting. It's like so many more people I feel like that I'm interacting with this year than it was last year with corruption.
Now, do you feel a big difference between the two factions? Nothing good or bad, but is there a difference between the two?
I think in terms of like, it's definitely different in terms of philosophy. Like Shannon and Winston are kind of coming at things from a different perspectives, I think. But it really hasn't been different in terms of like the frequency of study sessions and how many people are there and how frequently they participate. Like a lot of that feels very similar, in the sort of friendly structure of it feels very similar, but it's kind of it's hard to explain. It's a very different, like jumping from one job to a different job. You go from a one manager to a different manager, and it's always hard to make that adjustment, no matter how good or bad it is. It's always, dealing with change is always hard in any sort of situation like that. I got very lucky, I think, in that sense, where I went from a good manager to another good manager, and that worked out really well. Or at least I hope it does with tournament season this year. We'll see.
Yeah,
And like to speak on that a little bit, like moving over to the new faction, like it is a little different to talk Star Wars with, like, while Mike Kalinowski and Chance are both IG players, and Chance is actually, he really likes Star Wars, but then to go over and you have like Ace Cabrera, who is as like well versed and as competitive in your division specifically, and is there a big change in not necessarily how deep the study sessions go, but how, like, the partner being there as good as you helps you develop your skills as well?
First of all, thank you for saying that Ace and I are on the same level. I appreciate that. I take it as a sincere compliment, because he really is. He's been a huge factor this year for me. The fact that we haven't ever had multiple Star Wars players on one faction, or at least not one that I've played on, I thought was going to be a huge adjustment, and it kind of was at first, because I was sort of skeptical. I'm like, at the end of the day, I may still end up competing against this person, and at the end of the day, I'm in it for me. I'm not in it for him. So he's like, I'm going to be, seeking to take him down if it comes down to it. And so I guess I'm kind of grateful that it hasn't yet, but the attitude that I came into this season with specifically having to play with another Star Wars player was one I was just very skeptical. I'm like, I don't know. I don't trust this person. I don't think that he trusts me. At the end of the day, he's still competition. And I think he sees that in me too. And so this will be interesting to see how a study session goes. And it'd be interesting to go back in time and see what would it have been like if I had been the one playing in the first tournament this year and not Ace. But the fact that it was Ace and it was me that basically had to decide at that point, like, how involved do I want to be in this? Do I want to be a team player and come in and try and, really help what I still saw at that point as the competition? Or do I want to just set this out and he can, sink or swim on his own? Ultimately, I decided that when I thought about it, I was like, if we were in swapped positions, I would want his help. I would really hope that he would at least be there for a couple study sessions for me. And that's sort of what convinced me to sort of make sure that I stayed involved and that I attended those study sessions with him and made sure that I was at the very least making an appearance at first. But the more I did it, the more enjoyment I got out of it and the more helpful it was for me in terms of actually studying too, even just being the person that's there answering questions, give it, the person that's asking the questions, that's helpful for me too in that sense. So that's something that I think I've taken a lot of this year is just been, kind of being on the other side of things and learning how valuable that can be for me in terms of studying.
Now, how are you feeling about this upcoming tournament? Are you taking his help now?
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. No, it's been great because it's been, between Ace and Winston and Chandru and Paul, it's been, kind of our core Star Wars team of preparation and study, which has been really helpful. And yeah, Ace has been there along the way, and it's been great in terms of kind of hitting some of those deeper questions. It's definitely helpful there. But you'd be surprised. Lots of people are good at writing a 5-point question. It's really easy actually to, dig really deep and try and stump some person. I think it can be a lot harder to sort of write those 2 and 3-point questions and figure out how to get creative and keep it fresh in that sense. So having Ace for something like that has been almost more valuable than it is for having him for the 5-pointers. He's great for all of it, but I think there's more of a challenge in trying to stump somebody with a question that's only worth 2 or 3 points. We've seen that a lot this season. I think they've definitely upped the ante in terms of the actual questions that come up in the Star Wars matches. And so to try and match that in a study session is definitely more of a challenge, I think, than the 5-pointers sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I as a viewer, when we watch the matches and those deep dive questions coming up, I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, I see you guys just rattle off all these details. I'm like, huh? And I wouldn't make it past question round 1. I don't know how you guys do it.
Thank you. I sometimes am like that too. When I watch, I think it was was it Thomas Harper's 5-pointer from his recent match where I was just like, I don't know. That was one that was over my head, which was frustrating because it's rare that I don't know an answer to the 5-point questions. I'm sort of even when I'm sitting and playing along, I feel like that's sort of, I'm hard pressed to not find a 5-point question I can answer. And that was one where I was just like, oh, damn, I have no idea. Yeah.
It seems like Winston is good at getting players out of their own hands. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah. I think he might be one of the best ones at that, at least for me, because I remember, at the beginning of the season when I played in the first match of the season, and I remember him asking me, what what can I be for you in this match? Like, what do you want me to do besides sit here and cheerlead? And that was really all that I needed, was just for somebody to just keep me out of my own head. Even playing in these competitions for like virtually, it's still like, it's amazing how easy it is to just get so bogged down. I think especially in the Star Wars tournament, where everything is in the details, and it's really easy to get bogged down in the details. But for me, that's kind of always been the case, is like, make sure that you're not just getting stuck in your own head. Make sure you're keeping your head above water, keeping your eye on the prize and on the big picture. And that's a lot of times, if it's doing it with humor is really the best way for me. So Winston's really good at that and has kept it really fun, and is really good at keeping it sort of loosey-goosey in these matches when I tend to start to get a little bit uptight, as tends to happen with anything as intense as a Star Wars match.
So I was just looking at something and found something kind of cool.
Oh no.
Yeah. Swag is nowhere near, actually no faction is, but Swag especially is nowhere near eliminated this year. I was just looking at the standings, and between you in the Star Wars tournament and Final Exam in the teams, you can make up the 40-point difference alone. Like, just
no pressure,
because of the way, well, again, it's 4 matches, which is tough, but because of the structure and the spectacular matches being worth so many points, like the 3 of you can basically just do what Corruption did last year and just hog all of the points in those tournaments and climb your way up to the top.
Sweep our way right through the end. It would that would be really beautiful to see, I think, wouldn't it? Fingers crossed that it comes out that strong. That would be great. I mean, it would be amazing for Final Exam, even if it, if I end up getting taken out right away, which I feel like there's always a chance. I came into the tournament last year probably a little bit more confident than I should have been. And I'm hoping that I can take away something from that this year, and probably put in a little bit more work to prepare than I did last year, which I feel like I put a lot of work in. It was just, you come in with the wrong attitude, and no amount of work is going to help you in that sense. But I think that it would be great. I mean, I think that is really cool. I think it's a lot to ask. It's really interesting looking at the standings and seeing where we are and thinking that that's even remotely a possibility. But I mean, it would be great for something like that to happen. It would be really cool to be part of that kind of story,
And speaking of the tournament, you do kind of have to focus on yourself and your own strengths, because it's, if I'm correct, it's you, Alex Damon, Molly as well, and then Scrimshaw, and the other half are all rookie players who knows really what you're up against in any given match, because these people have 1, maybe 2 matches on tape.
Very true. Yeah, no, you make a good point, but I mean, some of these rookies have really, completely just blown it out of the water this year. I mean, I remember watching Nikki's first match and not really knowing what to expect, and just being so impressed. And obviously Gold Leader has had really, really strong gameplay this year too. So I think whether or not they're a rookie or not is not something I'm really considering at the end of the day, and I know other players have said this specifically about Star Wars, but it's kind of it's you against the question writers at the end of the day. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to keep your eye on the prize in that sense. But knowing your player's weaknesses, or your opponent's weaknesses is going to come in handy to a certain extent, especially with, opponent's choice on the board there, which is kind of nice. But it's hard to even think about whether, somebody like Gold Leader or Scrimshaw would be more intimidating to play versus the other, because they're both such strong players. we've seen Scrimshaw play for years so strongly and like, you know, not take the top prize. So I think I'm most excited to see him play this year and kind of see what he brings to the tournament that I think is going to be I think it's going to bring a lot harder questions than we've seen in the past. Because of the way that the questions have sort of shifted this year in terms of difficulty level, it'll just be interesting to see if he's sort of kept up with, you know, staying up to speed and keeping up on top of his, you know, preparation and study material and things like that.
As a Star Wars competitor, I always wanted to ask, how much pressure do you feel then you have to keep up to date with every movie, every show, every canon stuff? Do you feel a lot of pressure for that kind of stuff?
You know, the good thing about it for me, and since I'm a content creator and have a podcast that's centered exclusively around Star Wars, is that I kind of have to keep up with these things anyway. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have a podcast where I just talk about Star Wars for 2 hours plus every other weekend if I didn't like it. So that's the nice thing, is that it's something that I genuinely enjoy. I love the universe. I think it's such a fun sandbox to play in. And with things like Star Wars Visions and the High Republic, the sandbox just keeps getting bigger and more exciting and different and interesting and in really cool ways. So that's a nice thing. I think the other thing is that the fact that those things don't really come up in the Schmoedown is sort of nice, because for me, they stay sacred in a way that the movies definitely haven't, because I've had to just, you know, they're the things that get to stay fun and pure for me, whereas the movies have become sort of something different when you're a player. Maybe it's not that way for every player. Maybe people can actually sit and still watch these movies and enjoy them in that way. I think that I'm kind of beyond that at this point, where I can still watch them and enjoy them, but I am inevitably gonna just start writing something down that I noticed. There's no way around it. I feel like even if I were to like stop playing, I would probably still do that, because it's so hard to get out of that kind of mindset. But it's nice because when you're reading the books and you're watching the shows, you know, those things they're always pulling materials from the movies. They're always pulling different species and different line readings and different quotes and just ultimately reinforcing all of those things that we already get from the movies. So for me, it's really helpful. I don't know if I feel a lot of pressure to sort of stay on top of it. I guess in some sense I do, because I feel like they're pumping out a lot of novels this year at a pace that seems a lot more intense than it has in the past. I feel like there's so many books that I'm now just hopelessly behind in my reading, which is too bad. So I feel a little bit of pressure in that sense to sort of get back up to speed. And it's hard to do that when you're trying to prepare for a Schmoedown Star Wars tournament. So there's a little bit of pressure there, but for the most part, I enjoy it enough that it usually doesn't feel like pressure.
Do you have a favorite movie of the movies?
I love Rogue One. Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie. And it's one of those that I think that one it's sort of polarizing in a lot of ways, which I totally understand. It's a different, it definitely came at Star Wars from a different point of view, which I appreciate. But I think ultimately it's like not just a really good Star Wars movie, it's a great war movie. And just a really fun, beautiful movie to watch anyway, even if it wasn't Star Wars. I think it's great. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, especially that third act at the beach. And that final 5 minutes is maybe some of the best final 5 minutes in any of the movies, in my opinion.
Yes, all the feels, 100%. I remember seeing, that was the other thing about that movie, was that it was the first Star Wars film that I got to see on opening night with like a giant group of people, and there was so much like celebration around it and excitement. And I didn't get to participate in that for The Force Awakens for whatever reason, but for getting to see Rogue One with like 10 of my friends on opening night getting drinks before and then sitting through the movie. And my sister showed up champagne drunk because it came out right around Christmas and she came from a holiday party. And so she fell asleep in the middle of the movie and then woke up and started laughing at the end when I was just like, it's so safe. The whole experience of it overall was so much fun and so silly. And I think part of that is what contributes to, that part of that contributes to the fact that it's my favorite movie was the opening night experience of it will stay with me.
Oh, that's great. Do you have any questions, Daniel, you want to ask?
I was actually just like I completely understand that feeling because as like my favorite movie fandom would be the Harry Potter series, and my favorite is the second, which many people consider one of the worst in the series.
Really?
But
oh, that's too bad.
but I love it because it's the first, like, it might be the first movie I saw in theaters when I was like 6 or so, but it's definitely the first one I remember seeing in the movie theater, and so it just sticks with me. The giant snake on the giant screen was awesome, and I just have a different connection to that movie than I've had to any other movie before. And
oh,
so,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. That's a great story, and that's so wild to me that Chamber of Secrets is your first movie you saw in theaters. That's awesome. I can't remember what my first movie I saw in theaters was, and I doubt my parents could tell me. And now I wish I could. Now I wish I knew because it was probably Lion King or something. That was probably too recent because I feel like I remember seeing Lion King, but it was definitely Disney, right? Like it had to be Disney.
I'm going to show my age here. I think one of the first movies I saw was the original Home Alone in 91.
Nice. Oh my gosh. What was that? Like 92,
91.
91? Okay.
Maybe
Good
even
times.
90. Maybe even 90. And then
I
remember
love that
movie.
movie. That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, no, if I had seen that in theaters, I definitely wouldn't remember it. But I need to text my parents, find out if they remember. What was my first movie I saw in theaters? Because now I feel like I need to know.
And yeah, I have a lot of older siblings, and my whole family love movies, so I've been like watching movies since I could put a VHS into the VCR, basically. But
Nice. You've been groomed for it.
yeah, and the funniest movie thing I have is my sister and I. Speaking of Lion King, we had 2 VCRs that connected to our television, and you could switch the channel between them. And we had 2 Lion King tapes, so we could start the movie while the other one rewound the tape. And so we didn't miss any time between viewings of the Lion King.
Oh my gosh. That's efficiency is what that's called.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, other than Star Wars, Laura, do you have another fandom that you're a fan of?
Harry Potter was one of them for me for a long time. It's one of those that I've kind of backed off on, and it's been years since I've reread any of the books, but that was a huge fandom for me for a really long time. And the third movie was what got me to actually read the books because I remember being really confused by what was happening. And I was on a family vacation and my brother like threw the book at me and he's like, just read it. It'll answer every question you have. And that's what sort of took me down that path. But I've always had a fandom to call home. I sort of come and go from them occasionally. Star Wars has been the really consistent one for the last X amount of years. So hopefully that one sticks by with me for a while. But yeah, I've kind of always had a fandom. I've gotten really not really into, I shouldn't say that because that's a crazy overstatement, but I did like an MCU rewatch recently, and I think it was kind of right before Loki came on that I went through and rewatched all of those movies, and then diving into WandaVision and Loki, I don't want to call myself a member of like the Marvel fandom because that's not the case at all, but that was really fun, and it was a really nice break from Star Wars too. And I've been really enjoying going back and rewatching some of those again. It's been kind of a nice break, and I really want to go back and rewatch Loki sometime soon too, because I just loved that show so much.
It was great, and I loved WandaVision. I thought that was I thought they did a really great job with that idea and concept.
It was such a strange show, but it was so good. It was just good and weird. And you gotta love a good and weird show every now and then. WandaVision was so cool in what it brought to in what I think it kind of did for the MCU. It just made everything weird. It was great.
Hey, we have a surprise visitor coming on.
What?
No, I said don't put me on. God damn it. Hi, I was just passing by, stalking and checking the interview, but I'm on, so hi.
But hey, you got a question?
No, I literally put in the private chat, don't put me on. Because I don't have a question. And I've missed 25 minutes of the show because I was talking with Jay Wade for Speaking of Showdown. But it's nice seeing you. How are you doing today?
Fabulous, Frenchie. Nice to see you.
Let's see.
Okay.
So I'm gonna drop back out because I just wanted to stalk and listen to a bit of the show. So nice to see you again. And Ben, you suck, man.
It's awesome.
I misread that. So I know you don't have me for that much longer, but do you have any other tidbits? Any highlights of swag you want to share before we?
It's hard to say. I'll just say this. I think that, I don't know what season 9 is going to bring in terms of the structure of, the factions and what have you. I maybe that information's out there. I'm sure there are lots of people that know, but it's above my pay grade.
It's sort
at this
of
point,
out there.
Yeah,
Nobody
I don't
knows.
I don't really know what to expect. But I think if it's not the case of having like multiple Star Wars players on a team or faction or whatever it is, I think I would probably miss that, which is weird because if last year or even like January 2021 Laura was told that that I would say that right now, she'd be real surprised because I was not looking forward to it at that point in time. But I think it would be that'll be a hard adjustment to not have like somebody with that sort of knowledge who knows exactly where you're coming from, to not have that person available to like study with all the time, like that would bum me out. But yeah, I'll be curious to see what season 9 brings. It'll definitely, I know it's going to be different, but hopefully it's not quite as big of an adjustment as it has been going season to season these last 3 years that I've played.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you'll do fine. And good luck with that tournament. And before you go, where can everyone find you on your Twitter and whatnot?
Sure. Come find me on Twitter at @shutup_Laura is my handle. You can find me there on Instagram too, though I'm much more active on Twitter. So definitely go follow me there. And then the show that I host with my friend Alice is called Force Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour. And that's an audio podcast that releases new episodes it'll be every other Tuesday eventually. Right now it's every 3 weeks or so, every other Tuesday. But yeah, stay tuned, and you can find that at Force Toast Pod on Twitter for updates of when we have new episodes coming out, where we just drink wine and talk about Star Wars. It's a good time.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll hope to see you again, and good luck with the tournament.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
If I could just say one last thing, like I've really been a fan of yours since you like debuted in the Schmoedown. I love all of your matches. When I do rewatches, I don't watch all of the Star Wars matches because I'm not that well versed in the universe. Even if I watch a match 5 times, I miss most of the questions in it. But between you and a couple of other competitors and Kevin Smets, you've actually really inspired me to try and like learn all of this like crazy trivia so that one day I could possibly do this for for either the show or any of the other ones around. So I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I that's really nice to hear. So thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and yeah, thank you. Daniel, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter at aventures_SLTN. That's Avengers with a Canadian EH flourish to it. And I can be found there. I can be found at our Facebook group, Schmoes of the North, and all around our other shows on the channel, Schmoedown Night in Canada. I'm also planning something for October 2nd to replace one of the Let's Talk About Star Wars episodes, because he's going to be on a rotating schedule. So I hope to kind of fill in the gaps of those Saturday night episodes with something. So stay tuned for a more formal announcement of that.
And you guys can find me at Ben_Radio on Twitter. You can find me on this channel recapping the past, shooting the breeze, and get sweaty. And I think that would do it until next week. This is Ben. Have a good week, everyone.